Welcome to Marc My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Marc My Words. Today, I have a guest who has a lot of words of wisdom to share, not only because of their experience as an entrepreneur, not only because they are also an author, but also, as I look over all my notes to prepare for this episode, her family has two mottos. If it is meant to be, it is up to me, and every day is great. And I know today is a great day because I have Rhonda Parker-Taylor here to talk to us and spend the next 50-ish minutes with us. And she is not only an entrepreneur, director of operations, and intelligent solutions business and leadership consultant, she is also an author of the novel Crossroads, a suspense novel, and she's here with us today. Rhonda, welcome to Marc My Words. How you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And boy, that was an introduction. You did a great job and you did your research, I can tell. And you're right. Mark my words. That's what the podcast's about. We are going to have a lot of things that each one of your audience members could take back and make them actionable steps, and also probably hear a few stories that where they were applied accurately, and maybe sometimes, guess what? May have not done so well with the application of the words and the slogans that motivate us today. Can't wait to get started. And boy, you did your homework. You came up with two good ones. He's right. If it's meant to be, it's up to me, and make every day great.
Well, not only do I have a fear of looking really stupid and not knowing my guests a little bit, I mean, if I'm going to have you on my show, I at least want to do my homework and know who I'm dealing with. So, I mean, I guess it all comes back to my drive of like perfectionism, and I gotta, just do the very best that I can, among many other things that I could go on and on, probably have gone on and on about in this show. And who knows, we might hear some of that today. So, one thing that I want to jump into, I don't know if I want to say I enjoyed your story about your struggle with English growing up, but I found it interesting and would love to hear a little bit more about that because it sounds like there was something there that just kept you motivated and driven to get to the point where you're a published author and you're actually pursuing a dream that I had for myself for many years. I was actually quite good at English and reading growing up, although early on, because of having a cleft palate and lip and all that stuff, I know some teachers were a little bit dismissive, but I showed them and I hopefully proved them wrong and hopefully it proved a lot of people wrong. But I digress. I find your story very interesting and would love to hear a little bit more about that and how it led you to being an author.
I think we all have our maybe demons or their negative self-talk or and limitations at some point in our lives. And I bet there's somebody right now out there in your audience that's going through something. And what I found is when you face your fears and you reward yourself for doing that by accomplishing something through set steps, goals, aspirations, mission, however you want to put it, making a plan. Those are all the key things that people say you're supposed to do, but it really goes deep down to the individual accepting their limitations and accepting that they can do it with some hard work, some grit, some grind, whatever it might be that you have, however you look at things like that, you have to um take that opportunity and I call it an opportunity, even though it may be a weakness. It is your opportunity. For me, it was English. I was petrified of reading in front of people. I was always going through books. If you look at any of my younger pictures, I always had an encyclopedia or a magazine or something in my hand, but I was petrified of the English language and the ability to perfect it. I didn't understand the way my own brain worked, especially at a young age when really I just wanted to talk to my friends, pass notes in the hallway, and get home and watch whatever was on television, right? So you're right. It was a struggle and a challenge that I had to actually put as a priority because I started to see, oh, wait a minute, you're not going to graduate if you don't get this accomplished. Wait a minute, you're not going to be able to go to college. Wait a minute, your boss thinks you're an idiot because you have a typo in the memo. Whatever it is, for me, all of them occurred at some point or other in my life. All of them occurred, and I realized that I needed to focus on self-care and development. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about, okay, let's make sure we got our water, even though, guess what? It's water time for my physical health, but it's also making sure that I take the setbacks and the opportunities to make it myself and reset and recharge and push myself through. I have a friend that's called it's redefining yourself. It's reimagining yourself. But you know what? It's really just me. That means I put me sometimes first, not just, somebody else's expectations, but what was important to me. I wanted to be a best-selling author. I had no background in it. My background in schools, business, and yes, I did a lot of writing in the academic aspects of things to get a doctorate, but I really wanted to take advantage of one of what I perceived my weakness and make it a strength. And when I started journaling and started writing, I realized, oh my goodness, what a tool for building myself. Because I could create a world that I could address all of life's woes through characters, And so that's kind of where I got there. And I realized that, there's been so many upsets in my life, just like everybody's life is tough. It's really tough. So I had to realize at an early age, for me to make it required prioritizing my development. And that meant writing.
You said so many good things there. I don't even know where to begin, but I'm going to take a shot at it. And a lot of what you're talking about is why I'm here now. And the one thing that really stood out is facing your fears. And I would even say kind of facing the imposter syndrome for me. It was a big deal for me. I was just on an episode yesterday talking about how I became a podcast host, and I don't know if I'm going to rehash that in back-to-back episodes, but basically, to cut the story short, is I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I think what I'm doing now, and you know, I guess being in front of the microphone and in front of the camera, I think it's something I always wanted to do, but I was afraid of how I would be perceived. And I think some of the obstacles that I have were setting me back mentally. And after just getting some external encouragement, like, hey, some people were coming up to me saying, why don't you start a podcast? I'm like, well, I've heard this like 4 or 5 times now. Maybe this is something that I can do. And now here we are. I'm facing my own fears, and I'm at least 100 or so episodes into doing this. I'm about 5 years into doing it. And it drives me crazy when I just have conversations with people about my podcast. They're like, oh, I'd love to do that, but I can't do that. I don't sound right or whatever. And my first reaction is, what? Are you kidding me? Like, have you listened to me talk? I mean, come on. I haven't let it stop me. So sometimes you have to just kind of face your fear and face reality and just dive in. If you feel it in your gut and you have the passion, as you clearly did, even though you struggled with English and some of those things, you had the passion. There was something in you that just kept telling you, I'm guessing, that, hey, you should keep pursuing this, keep getting better. And now here you are.
Yeah, and you're hitting on a real important topic for anybody out there that maybe is isn't following their passion or their dreams. And I'm not saying uproot your whole life, because everything's a transition. You have to do it in steps, actionable steps. But you're right. Facing your vulnerability and your fear gives you the chance to not be held back by yourself. Why are we holding ourselves back? It doesn't make any sense that we would let our own fear hold us back. You can't even point a finger and say someone else did it when it's you doing it. I did it for years. I held myself back, put everybody else first, push them forward. I don't regret anything that I did for anybody as far as helping them be successful. But my sister one day asked me, why haven't you done this? And I was like, well, it's sitting on my desk and it'll be okay. I could do it. And one day I went to get something off the computer and the computer was corrupt. And all I could think of is I'm going to have to type, because I had a paper copy of it. I'm going to have to type that all 300 pages all over again, re-edit, re-look at it. Why am I not doing it? And it was because I wasn't taking care of self. Self is such a powerful tool when you use it correctly. And you're like, well, what do you mean self? Well, when you hold yourself back, when you don't take actionable steps to make yourself happy, prosperous, productive, and you continually look at others and don't believe in yourself because you can do it, and then you end up giving up because the fear and everything seems so overwhelming. That's not a model that brings you to your uniqueness, to your purpose, to where you need to be. So be patient with the process. Be patient with yourself. Continually become a learner of life and yourself. Make sure that we are doing that. Visualize your goals and go after it. Anybody that would like to write a book, 1 page a day, and it's done in a year. And most people think they have to go in a cabin in the woods, quit their job, do all these. No, 1 page a day and it's done in a year. And when you do that, when you visualize you setting up a space that you can work in, or setting up an area that you can have your coffee, or whatever it might be that you have passion about, when you set up a space for you to follow your passion, and then you start making these actionable steps, what ends up happening is you start realizing that people aren't lucky. They are taking a chance on the opportunity presented in front of them. And so many of us don't do that. And so why in the world do we not practice that self-care, self-awareness of what those emotions are and that's preventing us from doing it, and then living a purposeful life that, I can tell you, mark my word. There's mark my word right now. If you practice self-care, self-awareness, purpose-driven life, and your relationships and your mindfulness to take care of your physical realm, you will be strengthened. Period. There's nothing left out there that can conquer. Yes, you'll have trials. I've had so many trials. You wouldn't even believe it. How about you? You've had a few trials. You're talking about you've had some setbacks yourself. But when you have those and you realize that if you improve yourself and become that continuous learner and continue to improve your communication, because that's a big component of emotional intelligence. A lot of people don't realize that IQ isn't what makes people successful. We're told that from babies on, when we're being tested in school that IQ is the only way you're going to be successful. IQ helps. It's good to have your reading, writing, math, science, right? But it doesn't provide a purpose-filled life.
I feel like you could just mic drop this episode right now. Everything that you just said is just like, well, that's it. We can stop 15 minutes in. We're not going to do that. But I really think that everything you said there is one of the many cores and foundations to why I want to do this show is to get people looking at themselves the way I have started looking at myself and looking at my life and saying, hey, maybe I have more potential than I realize. Maybe all these things going on with me internally, all these dreams, aspirations, and all these things, I could do something bigger than just, and there's nothing wrong with being a part of the big machine in corporate America. Everybody has their place. Everybody needs, somebody to do something, but you can also, at some point, and I think it just comes with wisdom and age as well, because when you're younger, I don't think you sometimes have the full scope of what your potential really is and how you can maybe remove yourself from some of the judgments of the external world, some of the things going on, the expectations, and just look at yourself and say, hey, I have more power and more ability and more potential than I thought. And these are things I'm learning as I get older and I progress and evolve. And it's one of the things that bringing awesome guests like you on the show who have amazing wisdom can come on here and mic drop and help me to mic drop and just say, hey, maybe get somebody to open their eyes and realize that, the imposter syndrome can be put away. All the other negative self-talk can be reversed. And I'm definitely proof of that. And I feel like you are also proof of that.
I think it's about you're hitting on so many points. It's about knowing who you are and then providing yourself a structure for that continuous improvement and be convicted about being transparent about your communication with yourself and others. When you do that, you can lead by example. You can walk through life and be adaptable and fostering a growth mindset for yourself, your organization, and for others. And that's what I've done with my consulting. My goal is to create a story of success. Typically, when people come to me, they don't even know what their story of success is. They can even hand you a resume. And to them, every job they've had is not good. It doesn't add value. It doesn't, many times because they're looking at what their experience was in the negative aspect of things. They're not looking at the negative, the positive, and the skills that they've honed by being in that job. And So that's one of the very first things I do is I'm like, let's get rid of this negative mindset and create a growth concept and create that story of success. We all have a story of success. It could be a resume that shows that you've worked in, the medical community for 20 years. It could be in all the different positions, the knowledge you acquired during that. And then knowing what your next step of life is going to be. But recognizing your progress and rewarding your progress allows you to accept and be transparent even to yourself. Hey, yeah, life's hard and I feel like crap sometimes because it is hard, but I'm still standing. The world hasn't knocked me down, and I'm still moving forward on my aligned vision and goal. Once you've aligned yourself to that vision and goal, and and you've acquired what you need to for that level, then you go back to the growth mindset again.
I know a lot about what you're speaking of as far as life is hard, but you just keep on going. And I can't tell you how many times that I said to myself, like, I don't know how I keep going, but I just do. And I think for me, the motivation to keep going is just something in my gut, in my soul, that just keeps telling me that I have something to prove and I have something to teach the world. And it's not necessarily to throw it in anybody's face, although I have certainly had my fair share of people who didn't necessarily believe in me. And I'm sure anybody who I knew 30, 35 years ago would be like, wow, I can't believe this person has their own show and is speaking and doing a podcast. And you also can't really get too wrapped up in that, but I like to reflect. I mean, I'll be honest about that. But yeah, there is something I almost feel like not only does a lot of the things we're saying here need to be accounted for when you keep yourself going, but I also think you need that little voice inside of you that's also pushing you, and you have to have like the passion. There has to be like an end goal too. So it's a little bit of everything.
Oh, definitely. It is. And you have people in your life presently. I'm sure most of your audience, you and I both have probably had them where that you may be fostering a relationship there, but are you fostering a healthy one with support, unconditional love? Are you empathizing with them when they go through something? All of these things are important to be able to be your transparent person. We're not meant to just be by ourselves and button heads with people all the time. We're meant to have engagement. Something like your podcast probably is a great resource for people so that they can reduce the conflict in their life by finding resources on how to better manage. And in this case, we're talking about their lives, managing them in a positive growth mindset. I used to hate it when my father would say, "Don't compare yourself. You're stealing yourself from others." I was the second to the youngest child. So if he said, "Don't compare yourself," that meant the answer was no, because I was probably pointing at that point to my siblings saying, "Hey, I wanted to do, they got to go, but I didn't." Well, I was younger than them. So we have to go back and think about the things that we're doing to make sure that not only are we in a growth mindset, but we were always improving ourselves by, practicing active listening so that we engage with our relationships. Are we doing that? Are we asking questions? Oh, it's so easy for me to turn people out and not listen. Tone, I think I said turn, but put yourself in their shoes. Listen, ask questions, Get involved, be intentional. Do this at work too, because the only way that people can progress and have better teams is through communication.
So I don't want to forget to ask you this. You talked a little bit about what you do for others. So I'm sure we're going to round right back to this awesome discussion, this part of it. But I do want to ask a little bit. I know you went to University of Phoenix, you went to school, you started your business. I'm just curious to find out how you got to the point where you wanted to help others and serve others and become an entrepreneur.
If you would have told me in 2009 that I would have left the path that I was on, I would have said, there's no way. I'm completely happy. I love it. And I was working as a campus director at a college and still being able to teach and learn and develop people just like I love to do. And a knock on the door can change everything. And in 2009, I lost my adopted son. It was one of the most traumatic things that I'd lost other people, and I've lost other people since then. But it was one of the most tragic things that haunted me. And I worked in the academic world, and it was very difficult for me to go in and work with the same age group. And I'm like, this is just not going to work. There was no joy anymore. So I had to do a transition. And in doing that, what I found is when realized that there was a problem, the problem being I was not getting joy any longer, then I had to come up with a solution for that problem. And I really wasn't sure if I could stay in the corporate world or the academic world because of the trauma. So we've all had some kind of trauma. And the death of my adopted son was the big one. That's the big push that finally I was like, I see there's a need out there. People didn't know how to do resumes anymore. They didn't know how to do career searches. They didn't know how to build a stories of success and do interviews. And they didn't know how to create marketing plans for their business. And I'm like, that is something that I can do. It's something I was teaching. It was something that I had done before for others. And I'm like, this is something that is a model that I could do for myself. And I decided then the transition for me was that I was going to still help others, but it was going to be in a manner that protected my emotional state that I was in. And I found that by setting small, achievable goals, I was able to do it. And I've never had to go back. My consulting grew. I was able to write Crossroads, my fiction novel. I was able to get it published. I've got other books coming out. And I realized, if you practice resiliency, if you're compassionate to yourself and others, and you remain driven. When my dad started his business, he said that he had no choice but to succeed. If he didn't, he had 5 babies because there was 5 of us kids that he had to feed. So you've got to get that mindset that's not out of desperation, but when you're ready to ask for the price that you're worth, or that you're ready to set the boundaries to have a healthy working life, you go ahead and you put it together, and then you seek outside perspectives to keep you in line. Have an accountability a partner.
Anytime somebody asks me like what my strengths are when I'm interviewing for a job, or just when anybody asks me the question, one of the first things that I always say is resilience. And I feel like that is one thing that I try to bring up as much as I can on this show and just in life, because being resilient is very important. I think it kind of alludes to something that we were talking about earlier, where you get knocked down, you have naysayers, you have other struggles in life, and life is hard. I mean, if life was easy, we would all be trillionaires and none of us would really be working, and it would be a completely different world. But life is hard, and there are many small, big things, whether it's baggage, whether it's something happening today. Life is hard, and you have to be resilient. You have to be strong enough, no matter what it is, in order to have the life that you want, accomplish the goals that you want, to have the life that you want. It's not going to get handed to you. And I think you're a terrific example of how you understood that and you didn't let any of the things going on in your life, and the death of a loved one is definitely like there's nothing bigger than that. And I mean, for you to have all that awareness and say, I need to take my talents, continue to use them, but I have to reinvent myself. And here you are now as an entrepreneur teaching others all the great things that you know. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. That's what inspires me.
I think that that's very wise of you. And for anybody out there in the audience, I'd like to say, give yourself some grace. Sometimes it takes time to redefine, to redo it, but don't stay stuck in a rut. Don't hide from those fears. Don't, stay there and not put anything into practice. Turn around and say, okay, this is where I'm at. Define it. Draw a picture of it. Do whatever you have to do to say, be in reality, but this is where I want to be 3 years, 5 years. And I'm not just talking about career, because it could be your home that you want to improve. It could be your physical health that you want to improve. It could be your spiritual health that you're trying to work on. It could be your social connections. And you can do all of that. In my workbook, I talk about the 13 dimensions of life, and it's important to embrace practices that help you set goals. Maybe people don't like the goals when it comes to saying something about their life, but it's actionable steps that get you to where you want to be, so that you can genuinely smile and say, I have made it to the point where I'm happy. I mean, I'm not talking about because you have $1 million. I'm talking about you're just happy. You're content.
Well, as somebody who is an entrepreneur, you have your own business, you are an author, you're a leader. So how do you teach your clients about leadership and how they can, other than obviously, I mean, you've said some wonderful things. I'm sure that as a client, they hear all these wonderful things all the time, but do you have kind of like a game plan for teaching them how they can be the leader of their own life, of themselves? And how do you act as a leader and a mentor to them so they can accomplish their goals?
Oh, sure. So I talked about the life balance workbook. I use that to help people define themselves. And then when they define themselves, if a leader wanted me to come and shadow them and give them actionable items that they could do, I would talk to their employees, their peers, their superiors, and I would ask them some steps and some ideas and some opportunities for growth. But at the same time, I'd want to know where their strengths and weaknesses and do a SWOT analysis on them. And when you do that, then I can go back and say, these are the things they love about you. And these are the things that are opportunities for growth. And it's important to have a connection with that person. One of the hardest people for me to ever have mentored was someone that I did an emotional intelligence quotient test, and he had a great emotional score. But then when I looked at it, it was like, wow, he's high on the emotional intelligence. But there were all his points were all in all but two categories. His two categories were on the very bottom, and it was impulse control and empathy. So he had no ability to um, create a structure around him that was stress free, because with every wind that blew, he was running with the wind, and every good thing that was going on, he was running to the good thing. Every bad thing, he was hiding behind his desk, you know. And then when it came to employee issues, it was more of a that's their problem. They created the mess, let them, and there was no empathy there. So when you do any kind of consulting with a leader on their leadership ability, you first identify who they are, what they're presently doing, and how they're doing it. And you can categorize it as what kind of leadership style they have, even. And then what their belief systems are, and are they aligned with the organization? Their motivations have to be the same as the organization's mission, or it's not going to work. They're not going to be a good leader.
So you tapped into something, and much like the rest of this episode, you tapped into something there as well that I sit here, I'm like, this is why I'm doing this show, because we talk about all these great things that I don't feel get talked about enough. One of them being empathy and trying to understand, because we all have our point of views in life. We all have our experiences. It shapes us, and we view life a certain way. But we have to almost remember that how you view the world is, everybody views it differently. So you have your own unique perspective, and it's great to recognize that. But you almost have to have empathy for others, and as you said, show grace, which is very important. And grace is not a word that was in my vocabulary at all until recent years. A light bulb went off one day. I'm like, grace is actually very important to show people, because we're not perfect. We make mistakes, and it's almost in your favor to try to relate and listen and understand uh, where somebody had a misstep, or where somebody went wrong, or even if they're right, just to understand where you went wrong, or to understand just period, and to be on the same page. And I feel like we're not always on the same page, and I feel like that goes a long way. And I love that you're cognizant of that, because that is what makes you one of the many things, I'm sure, that makes you a great leader.
I would like to think I'm a great leader. I would like to think that I practice all of these things all the time. But as we've talked about, life is challenging. So it's how we navigate and overcome the professional challenges, or even personal challenges and obstacles. And so we have to offer that same grace to other people that are in leadership abilities, and help them be a better version of themselves, and remind each other that, finding balance and harmony is involved in everything we do. And experience the sense of purpose requires us to align with the team, which means the team has to be aligned with us. That's only done by cultivating meaningful relationships and having genuine conversations. So you brought up a very good point, and I think that a sense of inner peace happens when you're able to do that. Just like we're talking in this podcast, I can just feel the compression of the day going away. So those in the audience, if you're feeling the same way right now, hit like and share, because somebody out there needs to hear Mark My Words.
Well, I appreciate that. And I hope that everything you're saying comes into fruition for sure. I appreciate that. And one thing that before we run out of too much time here, boy, this conversation's going fast. I I know you talked a little bit about you should write one page a day, and I haven't had a whole lot of authors. I mean, I've had a lot of entrepreneurs who've written a book about X, Y, and Z, but not too many that have said, look, I am an author. This is what I'm about. This is a big part of what I'm about. So, if there are any aspiring authors out there listening, what advice could you give them as far as just uh, becoming an author, what to expect? Because it's not easy, I'm sure. I mean, I think
Mm.
I'm very good with words, and I think I'm good. I'm a good writer and good with the English language, but how many books have I published? Zero. So it's definitely not easy, and would love your perspective and maybe, some words of wisdom that
Sure.
somebody needs to hear.
I would love to. Let me show you the book cover. Here's the book cover. So, everybody out there that wants to be an author, the question is how to go ahead and do it. Crossroads. I literally did what I said, one page a day, and it's done in a year. And I would tell people just get the story out. Don't worry about the editing. That's not supposed to be step one. Get the story out, develop your characters, get to know them like they're your friends. And then as you get the story out and you do this character development, things start falling in line. You can do the editing afterwards. Once you get the story out and you know that all the facts are right in the story that you want to be, then go back and edit it, because editing should not be the first thing you do, because you're going to block yourself. A lot of people talk about writer's block. That's where it comes from. You're putting so much stress in yourself that you end up putting too much stress on the end product, and you're not even there yet. Get the first one done, get it written. Once you've gotten it written, then go back and edit it. Get feedback on it from others. Find a group like I did, these writers group of Indiana in Indianapolis, and I would go right at the writing center, and I would share a chapter at a time with the group, and we would read each other's work, and then we would mark it up and send it back the next meeting. So find those kind of people around you that will support your writing. Set up a space in your home that's just for that, because many a times it will squelch your progress because you can't find a place that you could actually do it that makes a difference in making you be able to be successful. I can't have anything on the television, for instance, know yourself. I can't have anything with a lot of different noises. I can have something like The Young and the Restless on, because I know what the voice characters are. I know who Victor Newman is, and I don't have to look to see who Nikki is. I can hear him, and there's not that back and forth emotional drama going on that draws you into the television. It has to be something mild for me. So know yourself, one page a day. Get the resources you need, just like I was saying that your podcast is a great resource for actionable steps. Resources for editing, resources for building your book itself, or hiring someone to help you with some of those other things that maybe you don't have time or don't know how to do.
And you touched on something that is very important to me, which is support. No matter what you're doing as an entrepreneur, whether it's something as creative as being an author, doing a podcast, or just running any old business. I mean, whether you're a chef or you're doing something else online, getting support and having a group to talk to, bounce ideas off of, and just people that can just say, hey, I know what you're going through. I know how you feel. Because being an entrepreneur is a lonely game. It's very fulfilling and rewarding, but it's very lonely as well. So any support that you can get on your journey is going to energize you and help you so much. It's so much better to feel supported than to feel alone. At least
Right.
I think so.
Oh, I definitely think so. It gives you a sense of freedom and purpose when you get others backing you. You feel when you feel like you're on an island by yourself, that's a lonely place to be.
Yeah, and I mean, this is coming also from a person being me who is very independent and doesn't necessarily go around looking for validation or support. No, you definitely should have somebody behind you to give you the thumbs up or even to say, hey, this is where you need to improve. It goes a long way. So I really appreciate you bringing that up into the conversation. And before I drop this topic in general, I can't help but to ask, how do you combat writer's block, or do you ever even really experience it at all?
I think we all have something that kind of stops us in the tracks when we're writing. I don't know if it was per se writer's block. So for me, I do more research then, or I pick up another topic that I'm ready for. Sometimes it's a matter of my brain is still twisting around the information that I want to convey. And so maybe, wait a minute, let's go to this scene because I know I'm ready for it or I've thought it out. I listen to music that would have the same kind of message or feel that is going to be in that scene. If it's someone depressed, you put the Doors on or something that's kind of got that lower energy. If it's something that is inspiring or love or whatever, then I put that kind of music on. I also talk to others and ask them how they would approach it, other authors, because sometimes a fresh perspective is helpful. Sometimes you're stuck because it really doesn't belong there. Like I can remember one scene I wrote, and I ended up cutting the whole scene. I spent 2-3 pages talking about eating at Golden Corral and all the food. It was the police officer going through the Golden Corral buffet, and someone ran and said, "Nobody loves food this much." I must have been hungry, or I didn't have another thought. And it's okay to write too much because you can cut it. Just don't get married to it where you don't want to get rid of it.
That sounds like great advice to me for sure. And yeah, at some point, I personally am gonna pick up and continue writing some things. I've actually had some of the same ideas since high school and
Mhm.
started writing stuff out, and life gets in the way. That could be interpreted as an excuse, of course. I've also found that I probably talk better than I write. So a lot of things going on this end that factor into why I haven't followed through. But I still think about it. Hey, you never know. I could buckle down and actually get disciplined and do it.
Right.
So,
That if you're good at dictation, to get a dictation device to speak it and let it type it out for you.
well, let me speak this part out before it slips my mind. And let me ask you if you can tell the audience how they can find you, work with you, find your book, and you're like all over social media. So I'm gonna let you tell everybody how they can do that.
I would love to. Just remember, my name is Rhonda Parker-Taylor. We're on the Word of Mouth podcast today, and I hope you all are having a great day. You can find me on all the social media platforms. My website is rhondaparkertaylor.com. Rhonda's with an H. All my social medias are same version of that, except for like Twitter, where they have the @1 sign in there. And feel free to drop me a jingle, pick up the book. You can find the book in on Amazon or Barnes and Noble's website, so you can get an ebook or a paperback on both of them. If you're in the Indiana and Illinois area, they're probably signed copies that would make a great Christmas present for any of your loved ones, because they're out there in the stores, where I've gone through and signed them all for everybody. I would love to hear what you think of the book, and I want to thank everybody for listening to me. I love to chatter. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well, I really enjoyed listening to all of your wisdom and enjoyed having you here today. I almost feel like I cut us out in the middle of some really good topics there, but I really just wanted to get a full scope of your journey. But hey, you never know. We could do an Instagram live or another episode sometime. You've such a great story. You've overcome a lot on tons of wisdom, and I loved hearing every minute of it and loved having you here.
I loved being here. Thank you for having me, and everybody in the audience, have a great evening and enjoy yourself.
All righty. Well, on that note, this was Rhonda Parker-Taylor. She is an author, she is an entrepreneur, and I am Mark Schmidt of Mark My Words. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt, or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.